Let me bring in Professor Charles Ackah now, who joins the conversation. Thank you so much, Prof, for being so patient with us. It's been a bit heated in the studio, but for you, how would you assess the State of the Nation address as per President Akufo-Addo yesterday? What are the key takeaways for you? What are the highs and lows? Where did Mr. President state what is fact, and where did he state maybe what is just fiction? Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the honorable members in the studio and to your cherished listeners. I've been enjoying the conversation. So I think I listened to the president yesterday. I didn't listen throughout the whole conversation. I had a meeting, but I've subsequently grabbed a copy of the speech.
Okay.
And I've tried to read it. And I think that on page 3, the president said that the address offers us, as usual, the opportunity to provide an honest assessment of our country's situation and seek the support of all in addressing it with hope and confidence. So basically, we expected the president to be as honest as possible so that all of us, our stakeholders, citizens, and not spectators, could also help in finding solutions to the problem. And my reading of his statement is that there were a lot of politics in the statement. And I thought that it was an occasion to avoid politics as much as possible. It's a State of the Nation address, and it's not a political campaign. I can understand that there's been a lot of things on social media, a lot of criticism. So he would probably felt that he should put up a defense. And in doing that, I think we lost some of the honesty and admission and repentance and brokenness that I expected to get from him.
I mean, you've used some words, pardon my coming in, but are you saying in some ways the president was dishonest yesterday?
Well, if you want to put it like that way, but I think in some ways he was doing more of a blame game and trying to score level up of politics. So
gentlemen,
not as, I won't say he was lying, but so for example, and I think other speakers have, Honorable Muntala?
Mutala, right.
Yeah, Mutala, and Professor Sir Asante already said, it is quite disingenuous. And you see, for you to fix a problem, you need to first do a diagnosis to know where the problem is. If we continue to do the politics that we have been doing in this country for these 66 years, we will not make quick progress. We need, as a family, as a nation, to admit where we have gone wrong and then to find solutions. All the discussions, or most of the discussions I've heard about why we are where we are, seem to push the blame, all of it, or most of it, on COVID and Ukraine war. And I think I totally disagree. So if that was the case, you ask, why is Cote d'Ivoire not in a mess? Why is Togo? Why is Burkina? These are countries that we are richer than them, and that we have more resources than them, and we have more human capital, more intelligent people in this country from all spheres of callings and qualifications. So why are we in this mess? Cannot be COVID. Even though it would have contributed to expose the weakness in our fundamentals, it cannot be Ukraine. Okay, even Ukraine is not in that mess, even though they have been at work for about a year. Okay, so how do we come to this point where we are not able to pay our domestic and our foreign debt, and we are blaming it on Ukraine that is fighting a war, that we are not fighting a war? So I think that is where I was quite a bit disappointed. And I don't blame the MPP government. It is historical. We've just celebrated our 66 years of political independence anniversary. And if you look at over the last 6 decades, we have built an economy that is not strong and resilient and sustainable. So sometimes we celebrate, and I think there's one philosopher that I wish to quote. He said the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. That's the danger, is that we set so low expectations, so low objectives, visions, and when we reach it, we celebrate, we think we have done well. Instead of being, setting a vision to become, a prosperous country, and then let's say we even miss that vision. We are not. And that's why we celebrate little things. Some of the things the president is talking about, roads here, roads there, here and there. This is good. But there's no government that doesn't build road. Okay. Despite all the roads we celebrate, this is a country that is 66 years of independence that cannot still boast of a single dual carriage way that links two capital cities. So from Accra to Tamale, to Kumasi, to Takoradi, to Cape Coast, to Ho, there's no way you can have a railway or a public metro system or an underground train, or to have even a dual carriage road that can let somebody live in Kumasi and come to work in Takoradi, in Accra, and can do that in 2 hours or so. The only thing the president has been able to add on, of course, which we need to congratulate, is the one that gets to Apejwa or so. Okay, but once before the traffic, after Apejwa, you are back to terrible road again until you enter Kumasi. To go to Tamale, you spend almost the whole day. 66 years of independence. So no matter what you think you have added, we are still far away. So I think that if I should look at the report, I think what some of the things that the president highlighted it were good. The president seems to be doing a lot. And actually, we need to tell the truth that when the president took over the reins of this government in 2016, things were not that good. And I think that's why they are comparing where he took the economy from and where we were before COVID. And it is true, and it's a fact, that during the period of the NDC, we had some terrible crisis, and that resulted in the economy growing at a low rate of around 3.4%, which was the lowest in about 3 decades, and consecutively for about 5 years, because the doomsaw continued from about 2011 all the way to almost 2016, and we didn't find solutions immediately. So that affected the NDC government. At the time, the international price of crude had gone to almost about $100 per barrel. So that also made the energy situation quite difficult. So when they take over in 2016, and the first budget that Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta presented, I was very happy about it. It was quite it focused on growth. It focused on reducing taxes and mobilizing other sources of revenue and to invest in critical areas where we could grow. So not surprising that we begin to record about 7-8% of growth on average, about 7% growth. That was quite good. And they reduced inflation, interest rates began to come down. So I think comparatively, they were doing well. Between 2016 and 2019 was far better than 2012 to 2016. That, it is tireless fact. It's data driven. It cannot be argued. But still, despite all of that, we did not invest in the critical sectors of industrialization and agriculture sufficiently enough to transform the structure of the economy so that when there is external shock like COVID or Ukraine war, we could be resilient enough to withstand. Apart from that, we decided to change our attitude of raising domestic revenue. And if we wanted to borrow at all, to borrow from multilateral and sometimes bilateral sources, to go to the capital market, to borrow dangerous, speculative money to the tune of, as we are talking about now, almost $48 billion borrowed in 6 years. Okay, so that has to be admitted. That we need people in the Ministry of Finance to explain. What kind of thinking went into that? What kind of analysis? And how were they expecting to pay that loan?
Right.
It is not COVID that made us to go to the IMF. Whether there was COVID or there was no COVID, it was not sustainable. In fact, they were going to borrow again, if not for COVID
So in other words, what you're saying, Prof, is that COVID can't be used as an excuse.
Basically, that's what it means.
Right.
One of the dangerous things I think this country did was the appetite for borrowing. And we have said it over and over again. There's no year I've had opportunity to write about the economy of Ghana that I have not warned that we were on a slippery slope the way we were borrowing externally from the international capital market. That is something that has actually jeopardized our economy. The whole domestic exchange program was unnecessary. It's because of the external borrowings, and we need to go and restructure our external debt. And the IMF is insisting that we must do first a domestic debt exchange before we go to the external one. That's why we are doing this. Otherwise,
I want to pose a candid, and the president says he was being candid. I want to pose a very candid question to you, straightforward. When you look at the facts and figures, and they are things that we've gone over time and again, Murtala rightly pointed out, our debt stood at around 120 billion Ghana cedis as of the time this administration took over. Right now, we're looking at in excess of 540 billion. Did in ending up at the doorstep of the IMF once more, you're an economist, did we, partly on the back of overborrowing, precipitate getting to the IMF? I want you to quickly address that as you move on.
No, exactly. Because, and this is not the first time we're going to IMF. Okay, so sometimes we've gone to IMF when we actually have a genuine crisis. And sometimes on this occasion, it's mainly because of our overborrowing. Okay. And we are not likely going to be able to service our debt. We don't have what it takes. You see, when you borrow, then there's nothing wrong with borrowing. I support borrowing when it's necessary.
Right.
And when the borrowing is used for productive investment. That's not what I can see, basically. If a father goes to borrow and then comes to buy Rolls Royce and an iPhone and an iPad for all his 5 children and the wife, of course, they will think he's a good father and they will congratulate him. And the president is saying that we should congratulate him for some of the things that they have done with the borrowing. But it's different if he borrowed to invest in a business or in, let's say, a long-term investment that will yield returns adequate enough to be able to service the loan. When you go to international market to borrow at such high exchange interest rate and also not in your own currency, you cannot use it for consumption. You cannot use it for things that will not be able to pay for the loan. And I think if you look at the borrowing, it has been high. No, now we are talking about 480 billion Ghana cedis borrowed in 6 years. And I don't think that is it's about 80 billion cedis in a year. Okay, it works out to about $48 billion over the 6 years. We are going to the IMF for $3 billion. That's just about 6% of how much we borrowed in 6 years. So it's basically insignificant. We didn't need to go there. We don't need the IMF to have been dictating to us on how to build the economy if we were a bit more fiscally disciplined and prudent with our borrowing and our spending.
Right. So, Prof, in the next 2 minutes or so, I would like you to wrap up with the rest of your thoughts for us so we can cap off from the studio.
Yes. So I think that I'm happy that the president has noted that we will need to fix agriculture. And I think they rightly set up the agriculture industry, this one factory. I think it looks like it's a good idea. And we will need to address our import dependency to reduce our import bill. And for me, I think the details are still going to be checked. But that is something that I think we need to look at, how to industrialize and how to stop importing. Some of the things we import include toothpick. The last time I saw mop stick that the children are taking to secondary school is imported from China. These are sticks that you use to put into the mop, to scrub. So these kind of things that we keep importing, we should have the capacity.
So basically, the import substitution that the president touts must be brought to bear in real terms.
Yes, but it has to be done properly. And we need to look at where is the financing going to come from. Is the government going to finance that? Or are they going to borrow from the commercial banks at 40%, 30-something% interest rate? They are not going to be sustainable. We've done this before under Kwame Nkrumah, and we realized that even at Champon, they were not sustainable. So it's a comprehensive program that has to be looked at, and we need to talk about it. But I think finally, what I think was totally missing from the president's speech was about the fact that one of the critical cornerstones of building a sustainable economy is about the moral principles and moral values, core values that this nation is losing. And there was no mention about it. And that is sad indeed. And you can link that to the Ashama matter case. So when we live in a country where even the armed or military men don't feel safe, that anybody can get up and kill a uniformed military man, that is a country that has lost the fear of God and its godly values. That is a country that you are seeing corruption. You are seeing so much killings and ritual killings. Recently, we saw in Mankesim, a nursing student was kidnapped and slaughtered and killed. When we come to a situation like that, where the country is losing its moral values, where children can go on strike and demonstrate and destroy school properties, children can insult the president of the country, all of these things. When we are now coming to a country where we don't know between right and wrong, and we have been talking about, LGBTQ bill here and there, marriage institution is under attack. I think this is something that the president has to talk about because it affects the integrity of even the people we elect to lead us when corruption is not seen as an issue. And people can amass wealth in a short time, build houses, make investment, and they are not able to explain the sources of their income. This is something that I think is something that it needed to be highlighted. How do we go back to a country that cherishes integrity and our culture and our moral values and our religion to make sure that we are building an honest and a society that is sustainable and has integrity and the fear of God? That's something that I think was totally missing. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. We're very grateful. Professor Ackah is with the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana. We're grateful for you.